Welcome back to the Terry and Jesse Show. Sam Shamoun with us, an expert on Islam. Sam, here's a question that a lot of us ask. What does Islam mean?
In the theological context, it means submission or surrender to the one God. Mm-hmm. According to the Quran, Allah of the Quran is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In point of fact, we are told that Abraham, for example, in chapter 3 of the Quran, and just to help the audience understand, the Quran consists of 114 chapters. 114 chapters. A chapter is called a surah. So they'll say, Surah al-so-and-so, and each chapter has a name. I'll just go with chapter. If you go to chapter 3, verse 67, it says, Abraham was neither a Jew nor a Christian, but an upright Muslim. So that's in chapter 3, verse 67. Chapter 22, 78, we're told that this is the millet, the religion of your favorite father Abraham. This is the religion of your father Abraham.
Wow.
He named you here and before Muslims. And if you go to chapter 3, verse 52 of the Quran, chapter 5, 111, it says the disciples of Jesus told Jesus, bear witness, we are Muslims. So according to the Quran, all the true prophets, starting with Adam, culminating with Muhammad, were Muslims because they all sought to submit their will to the one true God, Arabic Allah. They'll even point to verses in the Bible to show that this is not foreign to the Bible. For example, Jesse and our brother here, if you go to James 4, verses 7 to 8, James 4, verse 7 to 8, it says, submit yourselves, therefore, to God. So you're going to go, there it is, submit. Resist the devil, and he'll flee from you. Draw near to God, he'll draw near to you. So that's what Islam means. Submission, surrendering to the will of God, whom they believe is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the God of Jesus.
Sam, so obviously from what you just said right now, the Quran, it's complete revised history, accommodated to their theological system, and to bring in this false prophet that we call Muhammad, correct?
Absolutely. It's just like Joseph Smith, Book of Mormon. They all come after the Bible. They all ape the Bible and then pervert the Bible to make the Bible and Jesus agree with their theology. Absolutely.
So let me ask you another question, Sam. Was Islam spread by the sword, or was this spread by missionaries knocking on doors, sharing a message of peace that Allah loves you? What's the truth? Give us the straight dope on this.
Yeah, and you can even read their own history. If you can get, it's in English, the history of Al-Tabari, one of their greatest commentator historians. They'll admit Islam was spread militarily. The goal agenda of Islam is this: conquer the entire world for Allah and his messenger. There are sound narrations attributed to Muhammad. He says the whole earth, this is again, statements attributed to Muhammad in sources deemed authentic by the largest group of Muslims on the planet. They're called Sunni Muslims. Just like you have in Christianity, you have different expressions. The largest segment of Muslims are Sunni Muslims. They follow the Quran, tradition of Muhammad. Muhammad said the whole earth belongs to Allah and his messenger. It's not just Arabia, the whole earth. And he said that to the Jews who are living in what's now known as Medina. And he goes, and therefore I want to expel you. I want to get you out of it because it's my land. But I'll let you stay here, provided you give me a part of what, your produce, what you cultivate. Now, that said, Muhammad's final marching orders was to spread Islam until either everyone believes, or in the case of Jews and Christians, and this is in chapter 9 of the Quran, I'm not making this up, verses 28 to 33. In the case of Jews and Christians, they are given the option of paying what's called jizya, sum of money, to live as second, third class citizens, so they can keep their religious practices to themselves. They cannot proselytize. In fact, certain conditions will not allow them to rebuild churches or synagogues or build new ones. But you can stay Jew or Christian. You pay this sum of money as a sign of you being conquered, humiliated, debased. That's chapter 9, verse 29. If you don't, then we go to war, and to the victor goes the spoils. That's how Islam spread.
Wow. All right, Sam, what about, does the Quran promise paradise to those who die for Islam? We hear this all the time. It just happened last week.
Yeah, you're throwing me curveballs here. It's actually chapter 2 of the Quran, verse 154, and chapter 3, verse 169, 170. It says, do not say of those who have been slain, killed in the way of Allah, meaning jihad, they are dead. Nay, they're alive, receiving their provisions from their Lord. Now, one sure guarantee way of going to paradise is that you fight jihad for the sole purpose of spreading the rule of Islam, because Islam does teach that Allah will judge you according to your intention. So let's say I go to jihad because I want the booty, then I'm not doing it for the cause of Allah. So because Allah knows that, he can throw me to hell. But even then, you have to be quite careful. Islam has a type of purgatory. It's not identical. Okay. Those Muslims who go to hell, they're going there to be purged, because at the end they'll be taken out and they will enter Jannah. So this is Islamic purgatory. If you die saying there is no God but Allah, and you mean it, and you die uncleansed, you go to hell, but at the day of judgment, Muhammad will get you out from his intercession. So it's purgatory for them.
So this is the big one here.
Yeah, it is.
In the Islamic mind, the Islamic theology, what is a holy war? Can you unpack that for us?
A holy war is when Muslims, now they'll tell you, you have to have a caliphate.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Okay, the caliph is the one who is by right the ruler of the Muslim empire.
Okay.
So if you look at this Islam, when Muhammad died, his father-in-law and supposedly his best friend, Abu Bakr, became the ruler. It was Abu Bakr's daughter who at the age of 6 was given to Muhammad in marriage. And when she was 9, he consummated marriage with her. And he was 54 years old. That's who Abu Bakr is. Then he died. Umar, who was also Muhammad's best friend, second best friend, and father-in-law, because Muhammad died, and so on and so forth. Now, the Shia, which is what Iran is, they do not accept these as successors. They say that it was Muhammad's cousin, Ali, who should have been the caliph, but he was robbed. This is why there's a rift between them.
I see. Good.
They want to keep it in the bloodline. Ali is his cousin, married to his daughter. It should have been hereditary. It should have stayed in his bloodline. But the other is jealous of him, robbed him of that right. So when you have a caliph, then he can summon the Muslims to now advance towards all these unsuspecting villages, cities, and towns in order to conquer the earth for Allah and his messenger. Remember what I said? Muhammad said the entire earth, not just Arabia, belongs to Allah and his messenger, meaning Muhammad. So Muslims are duty bound to conquer the earth. Now, because they don't have a caliph, they're doing it through another way. And people don't know this. And this isn't the teaching of Muhammad. What I call sexual reproduction jihad.
What?
Muhammad taught marry fertile women, not barren women. And Muslims can have up to 4 wives and unlimited sex slaves, because he goes, I will outnumber the nations by you. In other words, through reproduction.
Of course. And it's working.
Sam, I've read that like Osama bin Laden was one of 54 children, and he himself had like 27 kids as well. Is that true? I mean, that's...
Because remember, in Islam, you can have up to 4 wives, but then you can divorce them and replace them with 4 others.
Wow.
And in Islam, it's very easy to divorce. All you need to do is say, I divorce you 3 times, but you have to say it on separate occasions, and it's done. So now, Jesse, I marry 4 women, and then 3 years later, I divorce them, replace them with 4.
Unbelievable.
So you understand, now they can't call to war because they don't have a caliph. But what they can do is outnumber you through reproduction.
Jihad through migration. Jihad, that's what he called it. Okay, so let me ask you, were the Crusades justified? Because this is something that you'll find secular universities and anti-Catholics really try to demonize the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages. These wars against Islam, I believe that they were self-defense wars against Islamic invaders. That's my read of history. What say you, Sam? You're the expert on this. Were the Crusades justified?
Absolutely. I'm not an expert per se, but what I can say is anyone who studies Islam honestly and sees the agenda of Islam and sees the history of Islam, glory to Jesus Christ for the Crusades. That's
Amen.
And I mean that. And I'm saying, even when I wasn't Catholic, even as a Protestant, I realized God Almighty saved the West from being taken over by Muslims, so that, thank the Lord, these folks from Europe, they would all have Muslim names had it not been for God moving the Crusades to stop the onslaught of Islam. It's only those who don't study Islam and know the real history of Islam and what the Islamic agenda is that would think that the Crusades was unjustified. The Crusades was a response to what the Muslims are doing to Christians in their own homelands and forbidding them from even visiting their holy sites. So thank the Lord. Now, obviously, not everyone who joined had good motives, because we got
Right.
moved. We know that. But
Yeah.
the purpose was to go and save our oppressed brothers. Isn't that Isaiah 58? What does our God say about true fasting? That when you know someone is oppressed and you have the means to set them free from their oppression, you're obligated to do so. So thank the Lord. Otherwise, it's happening now. They're taking over, but they're taking over by migration. So they couldn't do it through jihad, but they're doing it through migration.
That's exactly what my point was, Sam. I think about countries like Poland who didn't have Islamic immigration. They don't seem to have the problems France is
Or
having.
Hungary, or Hungary.
Hungary too, that's another one. So here's the question. Now, you think you already answered it. Is Islam still a threat to the West?
Absolutely. Now, we have to be careful, because when people hear me speak, they'll think that I'm saying every Muslim and his mother is a terrorist. No,
of course not.
no, because I'm not saying it's to be politically correct.
No.
I'm being honest, just like how many Catholics know their faith and they're zealous for them?
Very few.
Most Muslims have no idea about Islam. I know, because when I tell them, hey, Muhammad said this, I go, you're lying. That doesn't say that in the Quran. The Quran doesn't say that. You're lying. I remember one time when I told him, man, did you know your prophet married a 9-year-old? He's got angry. You're lying. I had to take him to the Muslim bookstore, show him Bukhari. He looked at it stunned. He goes, yeah, you're right. So I want to be clear. Most Muslims are cultural Muslims. When they came here, they came to escape the tyranny in their lands. However, you do have those who do believe in Islam and know what it teaches, and they're using our laws to come and infiltrate. So there are basically 3 stages to jihad, and I'll try to run them through real quickly.
Sure.
Stage 1, if you're outnumbered, you preach tolerance, coexistence. And there are chapters of the Quran where Muhammad is outnumbered, so he's talking about, to you, your religion, to me, my religion. Stage 2, when you have enough military prowess and resources, then you play the Islamophobia card.
Wow.
That's called the self-defense stage. Look, you're threatening our rights to exist, and you want to forbid us from worshiping, and you're not allowing our women to veil. We have a right to defend ourselves. That's stage 2. Stage 3, when they are now the majority, conquer, subjugate, and rule over them. And if you look at the population of Muslims, you'll see one of those 3 stages being implemented right in front of your eyes today. In America, it's stage 1. UK, they're in stage 2.
Right.
Wow.
Right. I can see that.
That's why there are pockets in the UK. Muslims take over. You can't come and mess with them. They don't submit to the laws. They will now take matters into their own hands. And then you see places where it's dominating Muslims. It's stage 3. Look at Pakistan, blasphemy law. You're a Christian, you get accused of blasphemy, you're killed.
Wow. Jesse.
Let me ask about the founder itself. What can you tell me about how Muhammad received his pedigree as a prophet? Tell us about that cave. What did he encounter? What did he say? What does the story say about Muhammad?
Yeah, this is one of the ways God set me free from Muhammad, because when I read his story, it seemed like he was sincere and he wasn't trying to deceive. Then I realized from our Lord that Satan masquerades as an angel of light. How do we know if someone's being influenced by Satan? He'll preach another Jesus, present a different gospel, different spirit. Yep. That's Muhammad.
Sure.
According to the Muslim traditions, they're very embarrassing. It says that Muhammad would annually go to the Hira caves. That's in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, if we go with Islamic version of history. During that one excursion, he was around 40 years old. They say it was around 6'10". A spirit appeared to him and told him, Iqra. Now, Arabic term Iqra can mean read or recite. According to some reports, supposedly Muhammad said, I don't know how to read. And it says the spirit squeezed him. And Muhammad's reported words was, he thought he was going to die. Released him, repeated it again. Again, Muhammad responds the same way. He did it 3 times. And Muhammad was horrified, terrified, terrorized. And then finally, the spirit told him to recite these verses, which became chapter 96 of the Quran. After that, Muhammad ran to his wife, shivering, horrified, terrified, traumatized. And he says to his wife, cover me, cover me. He says, I think I am Majnoon, demon possessed.
Wow.
That's according to their authentic sources.
Mhm.
Now, guess who convinced them that he may not be demon possessed?
His wife, the oldest one, what's her name? Khadija?
The first one, because she was a sugar mama, because she was financing him, Khadija. But she was. She was his boss, and then she married him. But she then took him to her first cousin, according to Muslim sources, Waraq bin Nawfal, who was supposedly a Christian monk, who would read the gospel in Hebrew Arabic. When he heard the story, he said, if what you tell me is true, then the same namus that came to Moses has come to you, and you're going to be a prophet.
Wow.
So a Christian, according to Muslim tradition,
Yeah.
said, you may be a prophet like Moses.
Incredible.
No.
Let me ask you, Sam. So who taught Muhammad about Christianity?
Yes, that is an excellent question that puzzles us to this day. We know that some of the sources would have been, for example, Waraq bin Nawfal, the man I mentioned, because we are told he was Khadija's cousin. That means he was in Muhammad's life, because according to the Muslim tradition, Muhammad married Khadija when he was 25. She was 40. She was 15 years his senior. And by the way, Muhammad took multiple wives after she died. As long as she was alive, he didn't mess with her. Why? Because I said she financed him.
Makes
I wasn't
sense.
joking.
Yeah.
She was a wealthy merchant woman who hired him to sell and buy for her. She fell in love with him. According to Muslim tradition, she was 15 years his senior. She was 40, he was 25. So that means all the way up until he was 40 years old, Waraqah was in his life. That means he had a Christian influence in his life. Some will also mention a monk named Bahira. So there were various sources, but the Christology of the Quran is very convoluted. If you go to the earliest apologetic against Muhammad, John of Damascus, John the Damascene, saint of the church, the 700s, writing in Syria, the caliph of the Muslim, he said that Muhammad was taught by a monk who followed Arius.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this can be seen in the Quran because Muhammad affirms Jesus is the word of God, sent to Mary as a spirit, and born from the virgin. So that sounds like Logos Christology. But then he says Jesus is no more than a servant. So this is why John of Damascus wrote, saying that his Christology reflects that of Arius.
Yes, I've heard that. Yep.
It's all over the map because you have a lot of Gnostic flavorings in the Quran, stories from Gnostics and heretics. So when you read the Quran, you get a hodgepodge of convoluted versions of the Bible, a lot of Talmudic fables, Gnostic heretical sources, paganism. It's all mixed in with Muhammad added to the mix.
Wow.
Incredible. Awesome. Sam, I got to say, thank you so much for coming on, and we can't wait for the next time we have you on to
We gotta
to do
have
this.
we gotta have him on next week, Terry.
Stay with us, Sam. This is how we end our show. Jess Romero, what state should we be living in, brother?
We gotta live in a state of sanctifying grace. Don't live in a state of mortal sin. Become holy or die trying.
Thanks again. May God richly bless you and your family.